After taking a month off to recover from surgery, I'm finally back. Welcome to Paid to Know, the podcast where I share the lessons I've learned from the people who paid me and from some of the people who didn't. And ayun, thank you so much to everyone. My friends, family, longtime supporters, and all the new people who have followed me on this podcast journey. It means so much to know that you're listening, sharing, and growing with me. It's been amazing seeing Paid to Know reach more people, and I'm so excited to be back and continue these conversations with all of you. And it feels so good to be recording again. I've missed sitting behind the mic, sharing my stories, and having these honest conversations with all of you. Today, I want to talk about client red flags. And I know this topic can easily sound like we are about to complain about clients for the next 30 minutes, but that is not really the point of this episode. I do not believe every red flag means someone is a bad person. Most of the time, a red flag is just a signal. It shows you how someone communicates, how they respect time, how they make decisions, how they handle pressure, how they see expertise, and how they treat people they hire. After more than a decade of working with clients, founders, small businesses, international teams, local business owners, creatives, and service providers, I realized that the red flags we ignore in the beginning usually become the problems we are forced to solve later. And sa totoo lang, those problems do not just affect the project. They affect your confidence, your team, your pricing, your boundaries, your schedule, and your ability to do good work. So this episode is not about being paranoid. It is about being discerning. Because discernment is not bitterness. Discernment is wisdom earned through experience. So this is your host, Ricka Raga, and let's dive in. The first red flag I no longer ignore is when a client cannot clearly explain what they need, but expects you to magically solve everything. This usually starts very quietly. Someone inquires and you ask basic questions like, what is your business? What are you trying to fix? What have you already tried? What does success look like for you? And the answers are either one sentence, very vague, or completely disconnected from the actual problem. And in the beginning, you want to be nice. You think maybe they are busy. Maybe they just need help organizing their thoughts. Maybe I can figure it out for them. But vague inquiries often become vague projects, and vague projects usually become feedback like, I do not know, I just do not like it, or can you make it better? And every time I hear that, I want to ask, better based on what? I had to learn that strategy is not mind reading. Good work needs context. If a business owner wants real results, we need to understand what we are solving, who we are talking to, where leads are coming from, what happens after someone inquires, what the offer is, what the current customer journey looks like, and where the business is leaking. A lot of business owners think they have a content problem, but when you look closer, they actually have a clarity problem, or a follow-up problem, or a trust problem, or a visibility problem, or a system problem. And if we do not identify the real problem, we end up creating prettier versions of the same confusion. This is why at the Digital Authority, we do not just jump into execution for the sake of looking busy. We are not here to just post, design, automate, or launch things randomly. We are looking at the business as a system. Because the most expensive mistake is not bad marketing. It is unclear marketing that everyone keeps funding because nobody wants to slow down and diagnose the real issue. The second red flag is when a client hires a specialist but treats you like an employee. This one is important because a lot of clients say they want expert help, but the moment the project starts, they treat the specialist like an order taker. They want your access like an employee, your speed like an employee, your obedience like an employee, your availability like an employee, but they hired you as an outside expert. And there is a very big difference between hiring someone for tasks and hiring someone for judgment. I remember one client situation where the first few conversations sounded promising. They said they wanted strategy. They said they wanted direction. They said they needed someone who could look at the full picture and tell them what was not working. But once the work started, I noticed the pattern. Every recommendation became a debate. Every strategic correction became a preference conversation. Every time I explained why something needed to be structured differently, they would pull the conversation back to the decision they had already made before I entered the room. That was when I realized the issue was not the work. The issue was that they did not actually want a strategist. They wanted someone to validate the decisions they had already made. That is a red flag because expertise will not always sound like agreement. Your strategist will tell you the offer is confusing, or like your marketer will tell you the ads are not the real problem. Your systems person will tell you that your leads are not converting because nobody is following up properly. Your brand person will tell you that the thing you personally like is not the thing your market understands. And if a client cannot receive that, then the relationship becomes difficult very quickly. For me, this is one of the clearest signs that a project may become unhealthy. Because my agency is not built to be someone's task machine, we are not here to do random marketing errands. We are here to build growth infrastructure, the strategy, systems, content, reputation, marketing systems, follow-up, SEO, nurture, and conversion path that help a business become easier to find, easier to trust, and easier to book. That only works when the client respects the expertise they hired. The third red flag is when everything is urgent but nothing is structured. This is the client who wants immediate replies, same-day turnarounds, sudden calls, last-minute changes, weekend updates, and late-night answers. And like in the beginning, you think this is just one urgent moment. You think maybe this week is just chaotic. Maybe this launch is just stressful. Maybe this is not their normal. But then by week 3, you realize the urgency is not an exception. It is how they run the whole company. I remember a situation where the late messages were not really about the specific task they were messaging me about. The late messages were the symptom. The real issue was that the business had no internal rhythm. No clear approval process, no real timeline, no one owning decisions, no organized follow-up, and no respect for the fact that other people also have working hours. It was not a marketing emergency. It was an operations problem wearing a marketing costume. That is why I always say boundaries are not just personal. Boundaries are operational. If everything depends on panic, the business will keep creating panic. If every decision happens last minute, every provider becomes a shock absorber for that disorganization. And I think a lot of service providers get trapped here because we want to be helpful. We want to be responsive. We want to prove that we care. But being available all the time does not always make you more professional. It just trains people to treat your attention like an unlimited resource. This is also why I care so much about systems. A healthy project needs communication channels, approval timelines, scope, deliverables, owners, and cadence. Not because we want to make everything rigid, but because structure protects the work. It protects the client too. A business owner may not be in a rush, or they may feel like everything is urgent, but either way, the project still needs a schedule. Momentum is not a vibe. Momentum is designed. The fourth red flag is when they want the same scope for less money, or they do not want to formalize the commitment. I want to be very clear that budget conversations are normal. A client saying, "This is over my budget, do you have a smaller package?" is normal. A client asking if we can phase the work is normal. A client saying, "Can we start with this first, then add the rest later?" is normal. That is a real business conversation. But when someone says, "Can you give me the same deliverables, same strategy, same timeline, same team, and same outcome, but just cheaper?" that is different. That is not asking for a smaller container. That is asking you to shrink your value. I no longer do that. Pricing is a container. The price protects the scope, the quality, the timeline, the team, the thinking, and honestly, the client too. If the investment needs to be lower, the container has to change. We can remove deliverables, simplify the scope, phase the project, extend the timeline, or start with a smaller build. But the same thing for less is not a discount. It is a distortion of the work. And this connects directly to contracts, invoices, and payment terms. If someone does not want to sign, does not want to pay, does not want clear scope, or keeps trying to start before anything is formalized, that is not a small detail. That is a signal. Professional clients understand that professional work has professional boundaries. A proposal protects both sides. An agreement protects both sides. A clear invoice protects both sides. Scope protects both sides. I know, especially when you are starting out, you want to believe the best in people. You think they seem nice, they promised, it is just a small project. I can start now and we will fix the details later. But the smallest projects can become the messiest when there is no structure. I have learned not to romanticize unclear commitment as opportunity. It is just risk with better lighting. The fifth red flag is when there are too many decision makers and no accountable leader. I could make a whole episode about this because I have seen really good projects get delayed, watered down, or completely killed. Not because the strategy was wrong, but because nobody knew who had the final say. The owner says yes, the marketing head says no, the assistant says maybe, the spouse has an opinion, the cousin saw something online, and suddenly the whole thing becomes a group project with no leader. And I want to be clear. I love collaboration. I love hearing from sales, operations, admin, front desk, customer service, and the people actually talking to customers every day. Their insights matter. They see things the owner does not see. Or be like the person answering the messages knows the customer better than the founder. So this is not about ignoring the team. This is about decision ownership. There has to be one accountable decision maker. Someone has to own the direction. Someone has to say, this is the priority, this is the offer, this is approved, this is the deadline, this is the final call. Because when everyone is in charge, no one is in charge. And when no one is in charge, the project becomes expensive noise. I learned this the hard way in different versions over the years. Sometimes the person who signed the agreement is aligned, but then someone else inside the business becomes the bottleneck. Like, the founder wants growth, but the team is resistant to changing how things are done. Or the business says they want systems, but nobody wants to be accountable for using them. And that is where projects start to drag. Not because the work is bad, but because the leadership around the work is unclear. The sixth red flag is when they show up unprepared, uninterested, or too casual with the discovery process. And I do not mean they need to arrive with a perfect business plan, a polished deck, and a full marketing audit. That is not what I expect. Some of the best clients I have worked with came into the call saying, honestly, I know something is broken, but I do not know what it is yet. That is fine. That is workable. What is hard to work with is when someone books the call, asks for help, chooses the time, and then shows up like the conversation is just another tab open in the background. I remember one call where I could tell within the first 5 minutes that the business owner was technically there, but not really there. Camera on, but eyes somewhere else. Someone beside them asking questions. Notifications popping. Half listening. Giving answers like, maybe, I am not sure. Or, you can ask my team, while I was trying to understand the actual business problem. And I remember thinking, you are the one asking me to help you fix the growth problem, but you are not even fully present for the conversation where we identify the problem. That is already data. Because discovery calls are not only for the client to decide if they want to hire the provider, they are also for the provider to decide if this is a healthy working relationship. I am listening to how you talk about your business. I am listening to how you talk about your team. I am listening to how you talk about your past providers. I am listening to whether you answer directly or avoid everything. I am listening to whether you want help or just want someone else to carry the confusion for you. And I think this is where a lot of service providers question themselves too much. We say maybe they are just busy. Maybe they are just overwhelmed. Maybe they had a long day. And yes, maybe I have grace for that. But also, if you cannot be present for the beginning of the work, it is hard for me to trust that you will be present for the implementation of the work. Building a brand, fixing a funnel, improving visibility, creating follow-up systems, strengthening a customer journey, these are not things a provider can do in complete isolation. The client does not need to micromanage, but they do need to participate. The clients I love working with are not always the most organized at the start. They are messy, overwhelmed, and very honest about not knowing what is happening. But they are present. They care, they answer, they think with me. They are willing to look at the business clearly. That matters more than pretending everything is polished, because I can work with messy, I can work with honest, I can work with overwhelmed. What I cannot work with is someone who wants transformation but treats the conversation like an interruption. The seventh red flag is when every past provider was the problem. This one is delicate because I want to be fair. Some clients really did have bad experiences. Some agencies overpromise. Some freelancers disappear. Some designers do not communicate well. Some marketers sell ads without strategy. Some people really do leave clients with a mess, and I do not want to invalidate that. But there is a difference between someone explaining a bad experience and someone presenting a whole courtroom case where every single person they hired before was incompetent. I remember talking to someone who had a story for everybody. The past designer did not understand them. The past marketer wasted their money. The past assistant was too slow. The past agency did not care. The past employee was the problem. The past consultant gave bad advice. And at first, of course, you listen with empathy because maybe they really were burned. But then you start asking follow-up questions. What was the scope? What did you approve? What were they responsible for? What feedback did you give? What changed during the project? And slowly you realize the story has a missing character. Accountability. That is the moment I pay attention. Because the issue is not that every provider failed them. The issue is that the client keeps hiring people into the same broken environment and then blames the provider when the environment wins again. They hire a designer, but the offer is unclear. They hire a marketer, but no one follows up with leads. They hire an assistant, but there is no process to follow. They hire an agency, but every approval takes 3 weeks. They hire a strategist, but they override every strategy. Then when the project does not produce a miracle, the story becomes, they did not get it. And sometimes they did get it. They just could not outwork the chaos of the business. This is why I ask questions now. Not to interrogate the client, but to understand the pattern before I become the next chapter in it. What went wrong? What was promised? What was delivered? What did you provide? What did you delay? What did you change? What would you want done differently this time? Because I need to know if I'm walking into a real problem or a repeating pattern with a new invoice. And this is why so much of my work through my agency is built around systems. A client does not need another creative person to throw into the fire. They need the fire contained. They need a place where leads are tracked. They need a follow-up process so inquiries are not forgotten. They need a review system so trust is not only dependent on word of mouth. They need content with direction. They need search visibility so people can actually find them. They need a clear offer so customers are not confused. They need the back end, not just the branding. So when someone says every past provider was the problem, I do not immediately run. But I do slow down because the goal is not to be the next person they blame. The goal is to understand whether they are ready to build differently this time. So those are the client red flags I no longer ignore. And again, this is not about assuming the worst in people. It is about protecting the work. The older I get in business, the more I realize that discernment is not bitterness. Discernment is wisdom. It is okay to notice patterns. It is okay to say no. It is okay to pause. It is okay to protect your process. It is okay to require payment. It is okay to ask for one accountable decision maker. It is okay to say this is not the right fit. You are not difficult because you have standards. You are not arrogant because you have a process. You are not greedy because you charge properly. You are not unkind because you have boundaries. You are building a business, not auditioning to be liked by everyone. And if you are a business owner listening to this from the client side, this episode is also for you. Kasi diba, The best client relationships are not built on fear, confusion, urgency, or control. They are built on trust, clarity, respect, and commitment. The best results happen when the client respects the process and the provider respects the business. That is where the work becomes powerful. If you have your own client red flag story, or maybe a red flag you ignored and learned from later, send me a message. I genuinely love these conversations because every lesson helps another creative, consultant, service provider, or business owner protect themselves better. Thank you for listening to Paid to Know. My book, Lessons from the People Who Paid Me and the Ones Who Didn't, is now available in the Philippines as a limited edition hardbound copy and worldwide through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and more than 50 online bookstores. You can also follow me on Instagram at Ricka Raga. All right, friends, I'll see you in the next episode.